Marvin once again trained in Palm Springs, where he had an unexpected visitor, J.D. Brown, a knowledgeable scholar of the sweet science who has served as matchmaker for several Sugar Ray Leonard promotions during Leonard's retirement. He was dispatched on an espionage mission from Leonard to the champion's camp. Brown dyed his hair grey, wearing horn-rimmed glasses, and went unrecognized by Hagler or any of his people for 3 days. He watched Marvin spar and filed away mental notes of everything he heard Goody Petronelli tell him. On the day he left, just to prove that he'd been there, he had his picture taken with Hagler as the middleweight champion signed autographs for a waiting queue. The Hagler camp was furious when word of Brown's spy mission became public. But as Ollie Dunlap pointed out, Ray had worked on the telecast of a lot of Marvin Hagler's fights, so a lot of this was just an attempt to psych Marvin out. Ray had been away for so long he wanted any edge he could get, said Brown. I was supposed to go in and critique Hagler, bring back a report of what he did in the morning. The first thing I noticed that impressed me was that he had no entourage. When Marvin walked into the gym, he had no entourage and carried his own bag. But, said Brown, I did notice a couple of things. One was when I watched him spar with the Weaver triplets, Floyd, Lloyd and Troy Weaver, the younger brothers of former heavyweight champion Mike Weaver. They were young, junior middleweights. They were too quick for him, and they would flit around the ring. It pissed Hagler off. Stop running and fight, you little bitch, he'd snarl at them. So I knew Ray could frustrate him by doing the same thing. Another thing I noticed was that as soon as the bell rang, Hagler would move straight to the center of the ring. That was his domain. That's where he wanted it to be. So I knew that if Ray got there first, Marvin would not like that. Leonard, in the meantime, was training on Hilton Head, a resort island just off the coast of South Carolina. Angelo Dundee, who usually came in to polish off the final few weeks of sparring, arrived at the resort on the 28th of February, over 5 weeks before the fight. After each day's workouts, the two met to discuss strategy. Dundee reminded Leonard that although Hagler was a left-handed boxer, he was a natural right-hander, and that his significant power lay on that side. The conventional approach when fighting a southpaw is to move to the right, but Dundee told Leonard, you don't fight this guy the way you fight a regular southpaw. Keep moving to the left. Although Dundee and Mike Trainer would have their differences in the bitter divorce that followed the Hagler fight, in its immediate aftermath, the lawyer recording those long sessions at Hilton Head would tell Bill Nack, I can't give Angie enough credit. Ray's talent was there, but Angie helped to choreograph it. He stepped in and filled a void. Throughout the long weeks of work as he tried to whip his body back into fighting trim, Leonard reminded himself, Ray Leonard couldn't do this, but Sugar Ray Leonard can. The question was, could he ever be Sugar Ray Leonard again? A former Irish national middleweight champion, Dr. Terry Crystal, completed his studies at the College of Surgeons in Dublin. But before embarking on a medical career, he wanted to give professional boxing a try. In 1983, with 8 pro bouts in England and Ireland under his belt, he had flown to the United States and made his way to the Petronelli gym and sought out the men who had taken Hagler to the middleweight title to supervise his postgraduate program. Crystal had a boxing pedigree. His brother Mel, a Dublin lawyer, had been an all-Ireland heavyweight champion and to this day chairs the Boxing Union of Ireland. Another brother, Joe, had also been a professional heavyweight. Billed as the fighting physician, Crystal had made his American debut in December 1983 and had won all of his 5 fights on American soil. The Petronellis were never going to take too much chances with Terry. He was always going to be a better doctor than he would be a fighter, and we was not going to jeopardize his medical career by getting him hurt. We tried not to put him in too tough, and for years we wouldn't even let him spar Marvin. In Palm Springs, Crystal finally got his chance when Goody ordered him to put on the headgear and get in the ring with the champion. Hagler had been under the weather for several days. He and Crystal went a lackluster 2 rounds, and it became apparent that Marvin was not himself. He repaired to his room after the workout where, at Goody's request, he was examined by Dr. Crystal. It may have been the first time in boxing history that one of his sparring partners administered a physical to a reigning champion. When Terry emerged from his consultation with his patient, the Petronellis were eagerly awaiting the diagnosis. Was Marvin all right? Not unless you know a cure for the common cold, reported Crystal, who proposed a few days of bed rest for the middleweight champion. Bob Arum had arranged for a media delegation, 100 strong, to travel to Palm Springs for what was supposed to be Hagler's final sparring session. He was not pleased to hear that there would be no further workouts. He was even more irate when he learnt that the activity had been suspended on the instructions of the fighting physician. "Get us a real doctor," demanded Arum. "I want a second opinion." The Petronellis listened to Crystal and not Arum. Marvin did not emerge from his room until it was time to leave for Vegas. With the bout scheduled exactly a week after the 1987 NCAA basketball championship game, many sports writers flew directly to Las Vegas from New Orleans on Monday, a full week before the fight, a trip we likened to taking the shuttle from Sodom to Gomorrah. A media throng of over 500 was waiting outside Caesar's Palace when Hagler and his travelling party arrived from Palm Springs on Tuesday. 6 days before the fight, wearing a blue tracksuit and sunglasses and a white baseball cap bearing the legend "No Mercy," Hagler stepped out of his white Lincoln limousine. He was greeted by a costumed Caesar and Cleopatra, along with several Forks centurions. Caesar read a proclamation in which he described Hagler as the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. But just a few hours earlier, that designation had ceased to be accurate. Although the WBC had approved Leonard as an opponent, the WBA had not and ordered its title vacant. Once again, Hagler had gone to court, but that morning in Boston, federal judge Robert Keaton had declined Hagler's request for an injunction forestalling the move, effectively formalizing the WBA's decision to vacate the title. "So what else is new?" said Hagler. "They tried to take away my title before the Hamshow fight, and they tried to strip me when I fought Scypion. We're disappointed, but we're not totally surprised," said Petronelli. "Right now, I'm sorry we ever got involved with the WBA. We've done them nothing but good, but they turn around and do this." Morris Goldings, who had replaced Steve Wainwright as Hagler's lawyer, said he would appeal the judge's ruling, but the champion's camp did not seem optimistic. "This is not the first time," said the Petronellis. "We'll just keep whacking away in court and see what happens. But we're not going to lose sleep over it. You know how important those belts are to Marvin, but we've always said they can only be won or lost in the ring. That's why he's not getting too excited about it." Leonard's camp seemed even less distressed by the news. "It doesn't concern us at all," said Mike Train. "That particular title wasn't ever part of this deal anyway." On Thursday, another federal judge, Bruce Sellier, of the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, rejected Hagler's appeal, saying that the fighter failed to land any forceful blows in his attempts to forestall the WBA action. Marvellous Marvin Hagler has been less successful in the court than in the boxing ring. By vacating its 1/3 of the title, the WBA effectively turned Hagler-Leonard into a WBC title fight. While the IBF took no action, neither did it sanction the bout, meaning it would continue to recognize Hagler as champion if he won, and if it lost they would vacate the title. By ignoring a tune-up bout, Leonard would enter the fight having not fought for nearly 3 years. But he had not been entirely inactive. In the months leading up to the Hagler fight, he engaged in several simulated 12-round bouts back in Maryland. "I trained for nearly a year before the Hagler fight," recalled Ray. "I don't even know who some of the guys were. Mostly guys J.D. Brown brought down from gyms in New York. They'd wear head guards and use 10-ounce gloves. I used 14-ounce gloves and no headgear. They might go 3 or 4 apiece, but I went all 12. I was trying to reproduce the competitive nature of a real fight. I wanted to get that feel back. Did it feel like a real fight? Yes, said Leonard, except I didn't get paid. So who won in those simulated fights? Hey, it was my gym, said Leonard with a grin. They were hometown decisions. Correctly anticipating that he would be grilled about the inherent risk to his eyesight, Leonard had prepared a statement replete with medical testimony, copies of which were distributed before his first meeting with the media at Caesars. The session was preceded by an announcement that Leonard would not entertain any questions about his eyesight. However, journalist Pat Putnam raised his hand from the back row of what had to be the largest ballroom in press conference history. "Hey, Ray," he shouted, "how many fingers am I holding up?" In addition to the concession he had made on the length of the bout and the size of the ring, Hagler had agreed to the Leonard's camp's request for thumbless gloves. The raised gloves that the punchers would wear could more properly be described as thumb attached. The extra bit of stitching had been incorporated as a precautionary device to prevent one boxer from accidentally gouging the other with a stray thumb. Dundee was quick to proclaim the adoption of the weapons an edge for Leonard. If Roldan hadn't got thumbed, he would have beaten Marvin. Take away the thumb, and Roldan wins the title. Goody Petronelli smiled when he heard that. We was using the raised gloves in the Roldan fight. We'll be using the same gloves for the Leonard fight, revealed Hagler's trainer. The fact that Leonard was reluctant to answer questions about his eyesight didn't mean Hagler couldn't talk about it. "I'm not really thinking about the eye," insisted the champion. "That's his business. He's the one who makes the decision to fight. Look, this is a dog-eat-dog business. It's a man's sport. If it was me, do you think he'd come up to me and say, 'Oh, Marvin, there's something wrong with your eye'?" Somebody asked Leonard whether he would consider saying "no mas" if he experienced problems with his eye. "I don't speak Spanish," Ray replied. That was demonstrated the next afternoon when one Roldan, who would be fighting James Kinchin on the undercard, showed up at the gym to watch Leonard spar. After he was introduced to Leonard, and the two engaged in a brief conversation with Dundee serving as an interpreter. When Dundee discussed the impending matchup, he sounded as if he was training David to fight Goliath. "Hagler is a monster," he said. "It boggles the mind that he hasn't lost in 11 years. And here's this little kid trying to beat him." Dundee recalled that this was hardly the first time a fighter of his had been given little chance, citing the then Cassius Clay's challenge to Sonny Liston, Carmen Basilio to Sugar Ray Robinson, and when Willie Pastrano challenged Harold Johnson. Basilio beat Robinson, and nobody thought he was going to do it, recalled Dundee. He opened him up with the jab. The original Sugar Ray said, "How's this little midget going to hit me?" And he hit him with the jab, got inside him, and beat him. "Remember, everybody thought that Tommy was going to knock Leonard's block off," noted Dundee. "It turned out Ray was the puncher in that fight, and he'll be the puncher in this fight too. Ray is the puncher because he hits you with shots that you can't see. They're the ones that hurt. Those are the ones that get you out of there." In talking up his man's chances, Dundee had alluded to the fact that Hagler had been extended 10 rounds in his fights against Duran, Roldan, and Mugabe. "Yeah," growled Hagler, when apprised of Dundee's observation. "Well, I'm still here, ain't I? The object of this game is to get out of trouble," he added. "I expected to get hit by Mugabe, and I certainly expected to get hit by Tommy. I'd say that Hearns has better speed than Leonard. Besides," said Hagler, "I've got more knockouts than Leonard has had fights." In 1982, Leonard had been part of the HBO crew that had visited the Petronelli brothers' gym to tape a preview for Hagler's second fight against Obligemus. For reasons that are not entirely clear, Leonard had allowed himself to be photographed, a self-satisfied smirk on his face and clutching a fistful of money. With the thumb of his other hand, he could be seen gesturing over his shoulder to a sweaty Hagler standing in the ring behind him. 5 years later, the photo had become a motivational prop. Taped to a mirror in the Marvellous Marvin Hagler suite at Caesars, it was the first thing that Hagler saw each morning, the last thing he saw before he went to bed at night. "Do I resent Ray Leonard?" "Sure I do," Hagler nodded. as he sat in his suite. I don't think he has any business being in the ring with me right now, but I've got to prove that to the world. Just thinking about it, he gestured towards the photo, makes me mean. With every newspaper and every television network in the English-speaking world on hand in Las Vegas, there was no question that was not going to be asked. At a session with the press at the Sports Pavilion one afternoon, an enterprising scribe outdid himself when he asked Hagler, "If you were a dog, what kind of dog would you be?" The middleweight champion actually gave it some thought before some combination of German Shepherd, Doberman Pinscher and Pitbull, Hagler replied. There does not seem to be much doubt, we wrote in recapturing the moment, that he had decided that Leonard is a poodle. A few weeks earlier, Thomas Hearns had stopped Dennis Andrews to win the WBC light heavyweight title. On Wednesday, the hitman showed up in Vegas and pressed for a prediction on the fight between his old adversaries. He forecast the Leonard upset. "Don't make no difference to me," said Hagler with a shrug. "He's jealous. It's a free country, I guess. He can say what he wants. I just hope the same result is the same as when I fought Tommy. Am I at the same peak I was for that fight? Well, I've got to be even meaner. For the Hearns fight, we had a good strategy, and we have a good game plan for this one. I just hope the strategy we've got for Leonard works the same way. He can do whatever he wants to do. We'll accommodate him," said Hagler, whose subsequent vow would come back to haunt him. "I'm going to take control of this fight, and I'm not going to let Leonard dictate it." "I will not let him dictate the fight," vowed Leonard. "If he comes out full steam, he can only do it for 1 or 2 rounds. He cannot keep it up." Hagler-Leonard would be the 10th middleweight title fight held in Las Vegas, beginning with his fight against Sugar Ray Robinson back in 1961. Gene Fullmer had been a participant in the first 3, while Hagler had fought in 5 of the other 6. The super fight was Hagler's 3rd headline appearance in a row at Caesars, and the 4th time in a year he had topped the bill there. "It's getting better," he said. "You know, before the Duran fight here, I was a little bit tight. For the Hearns fight, I was a little less so. For this one, I'm confident. I know what's ahead of me." Leonard was conducting public workouts at the Golden Gloves gym, while Hagler sparred behind closed doors at Toko's. On Tuesday afternoon, the Boston Herald's Mike Globetti was amongst the host of witnesses at the gym when sparring partner Quincy Taylor, who himself went on to become a WBC champion, surprised Leonard, rocking him with an overhand left that Globetti observed and wrote seemed to shake the former champion. "Oh, Jesus!" cried John Madden, the football coach turned TV broadcaster and fight fan extraordinaire, who had been sprawled on a folding chair as he sat bolt upright. Although Leonard and his handlers would, for public consumption, make light of the episode, Leonard would recall that Quincy hit him with that punch. It knocked the shit out of Ray. Ray admitted he was hurt, and he was so surprised that he just backed away. If Hagler had an Achilles heel at all, it was probably the build-up of scar tissue that described his eyebrows and rendered him vulnerable to cuts. Leonard's initial battle plan had been to go after the champion early, hoping to inflict damage that might lead to an early stoppage. The punch from his sparring partner revised that whole strategy. "I thought, if this guy can hurt me, Hagler will kill me," Leonard told Tim Dahlberg. "Thank God Quincy hit me, because I changed the plan. I think what I brought back from Palm Springs helped Ray formulate his strategy," said J.D. Brown. "But Quincy Taylor changed it even more." Over at Toko's, Hagler was sparring with old standby Bob Patterson, along with the Weaver triplets who had been brought in from Sonoma, California, to emulate Leonard's speed. "They've done everything," said Goody. "They've even stuck their tongues out and taunted Marvin. They did everything we expect Leonard to do. It's been tough," Floyd Weaver acknowledged. "We knew it would be hard working with Hagler, but it's real hard. He didn't hold nothing back, and we didn't either. We took a lot of bruises to the body, and Troy got a broken nose."